Our world as we know it is changing past the point of return. The toll our costly lifestyle has taken on the natural world is devastating for humans and wildlife alike. In the last decade, people have become more aware of our changing climate, with the last few years having some of the biggest climate protests around the world. This is not a time to sit idle and watch the events before you unfold. This is a time to educate yourself and take action. Our planet has been changing drastically due to the temperature rising. Glaciers have been melting, which causes the sea level to rise. In addition to this, our land is being destroyed due to excessive deforestation. We are coming to the point of no return with our planet's rising temperature. Even with these devastating threats, there still isn't enough being done to effectively stop the progression. This is a problem that affects everyone who lives on this earth. We are all going to experience the drastic changes that are occurring. As a single person, you may not feel as though there is much you can do, but as a group of passionate, educated, and determined citizens of this planet, we can work to have a future here. We must focus on creating clean energy with less CO2 emissions. We cannot afford another disaster. As students, we learn about the health of our planet and the options we have for the future. To further educate our community and bring awareness to the current situation, we created a documentary. To begin this process, we sat down virtually with some experts who work to understand and battle climate change on a daily basis. We began this process by interviewing Nick Holschuh. Nick is an assistant professor of geology at Amherst College. He talked to us about the importance of glaciers. He noted that glaciers are the most dangerous geological hazard for humans through climate change and the impacts of sea level rise.
My name is Nick Holschuh. I'm an assistant professor of geology at Amherst College. And I started my PhD in 2011 and been studying the poles ever since. So 9 years as a glaciologist.
Nick is a part of a scientific advisory board for NASA called ICESat-2.
It is a satellite that we launched in October 2018 that is a laser. It's a green laser that points down at Earth's surface, and it's used to measure changes in surface elevation around the planet.
It is a great monitoring tool for changes in the Earth system and is designed to look at the changes in volume of ice on the Earth.
I am deeply immersed in this problem of sea level rise, and so I think about it all the time. There are people who think very deeply about changes in water resources. I don't know as much about the changes in those systems of the Earth. They will certainly be severe. I am interested in sea level rise, especially sea level rise driven by changes in the massive glaciers, because it's very uncertain what our future looks like. And so my research is really focused on trying to answer this question that we don't have a clear answer to. How much and how fast are we losing ice in Antarctica and Greenland? Spreading awareness is an interesting challenge associated with climate change because the public is very wrapped up in the solutions. There are criticisms of the solutions to the problem. And so their ability to perceive the problems of climate change is blinded by this concern about, what it means for another regulation or a new tax, or how we might feel it individually. That causes a blind spot for the problem. I'm passionate about trying to convey my enthusiasm for the science, because I think if people can first appreciate the problem, then maybe the solutions don't seem quite as onerous. Recognize the issue and demonstrate just how cool it is, what we know about the Earth system. Once we can agree on the problem, then we can start to debate the solutions. And so I'm hopeful that I can get us to agree on the problem, and that's where I devote most of my time.
After Nick, we decided another professor would be helpful for further education around the largest issues we are facing that need to be treated right away. Raymond Bradley is a professor at the University of Massachusetts, Amherst, and is the director of the Climate System Research Center there.
I'm Raymond Bradley. I'm a distinguished professor at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst, and I'm director of the Climate System Research Center there.
We got to ask him about his work.
So most of my research has been in the Arctic, in the high latitudes of Canada and Greenland and northern Norway and Svalbard. And so I've done a lot of field work in those regions, looking at things like how glaciers have changed in position, ice caps have changed, looking at sediments in lakes which record how the climate has changed. And so I've had a lot of exciting projects in those remote parts of the world. What have we been doing to study climate change at the Climate System Research Center? We've been working on understanding what causes climate to change. So we've been looking at natural factors that affect the climate. And we've also been looking at how the climate may change in the future.
Much like Nick Holschuh, Raymond noted the sea ice in the Arctic Ocean is rapidly declining in thickness and in area.
The changes that are occurring in the Arctic, for example, are extremely rapid. And one of the biggest changes is affecting the areas of snow and ice. So, for example, sea ice in the Arctic Ocean is rapidly declining in thickness and in area. And so all of the animals that depend on sea ice, things like polar bears, walrus, seals, and then under the ice, all of the plant and animals that live in the ocean under the ice are also being affected. So it's a whole ecosystem impact that is occurring, and that has a knock-on effect to the people who live in the Arctic. The native people who live in the Arctic are all being affected by these changes too.
We spoke to a woman who is actively involved in fighting climate change this moment.
My name is Robin Sears. At the moment, I'm working in Denmark as a research scientist in agriculture at the University of Copenhagen, but my real identity is as a forest scientist.
Robin focuses on the heavily agricultural forests there in Denmark.
Denmark, for example, Denmark has no natural forest that I can tell. Everything has been planted. The vast majority of the land is agriculture. And all of these cute little forest patches I see and bicycle through or walk through are all, you sort of look into them and they look like a lush forest, and then you get to a certain angle and you see, oh, all of those beech trees are in a line. So the difference here is that they've all been planted and managed, very heavily managed, for the last 1,000 years or 500 years.
And has also worked in various research projects around the world.
I don't work with farmers in the United States, only really abroad, mostly in the Peruvian Amazon, and now recently in the Himalaya in India.
I mean, you've talked about seeing deforestation. Where do you think you've seen the worst deforestation and like the place that needs the most help with it?
Probably, I haven't seen it I have in Indonesia, probably. It's pretty bad. But Brazil is really suffering. Oh, it's so bad. The big corporations, they invite these small farmers and they say, hey, small farmer, I see you're not producing much. Would you like to make some money? And the corporation says, here's some money for you to go cut down the next 5 hectares or acres and plant palm oil. And the farmer says, yeah, money, I can finally send my kids to college or school or put shoes on their feet.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the corporations that are driving the farmers to cut to some degree.
Do you feel scared or worried that people in the future, or even people today, especially the youth, are not going to be able to experience nature in the same way that they could before, and that the same way you do now?
I am afraid of that. I am afraid that in a lot of parts of the world, maybe not New England, but a lot of parts of the world, your generation and the next generations are not going to know the joys of running through a forest or getting a great snowfall or a great rainfall. The world has changed dramatically. The environment has changed dramatically. And it really makes me sad. But that makes me want to fight. So do I have hope? Yes, I think we can shift things around. I really think we can shift things around.
Do you have any idea like how we could do that, or the best way?
Yeah, follow Denmark's lead. if you were the president of the United States, you could lobby the Congress and say, hey, guess what? Denmark last week, do you know what Denmark did on the anniversary of the Paris Agreement signing? Denmark said, we're not going to allow any more fossil fuel extraction, no more contracts to fossil fuel drillers in our seas. Denmark is like the fifth or second or anyway, they produce a lot of oil and gas in Europe, for Europe. And they said, "Ay no más, no more." I'm gonna get my dates wrong, but like by 2050, they will do no more extraction. Right now, no more contracts. And by 2050, no more fossil fuel extraction. So my hope is in cleaning up our energy problems.
To continue our international research, we then spoke to a very talented artist that is centered in London at this time.
I'm Helen Linden. I'm an artist. I've been making work about climate change and sea level rise for a long, long time now, at least 10 years.
Helen Linden is an environmental activist that works with art and other local groups to spread information about climate change and the pressure that is on this generation to reroute our further path into cleaner, renewable energy. Helen is a member of the group Extinction Rebellion and has participated in different climate marches throughout all of England.
I've been a member of Greenpeace and Friends of the Earth for decades. But then Extinction Rebellion was set up at the beginning of, I think it was 2018, and did a couple of really interesting protests. And I thought, yeah, I want to join with them. So I went to join Extinction Rebellion on a big protest in London, October 2019. I went up for 2 days and sat in the road in Whitehall, which is, just near the Houses of Parliament. The object of that was to bring government to a standstill, so that, and we were there for 2 weeks. And we stopped the traffic for 2 weeks. It was amazing. And that was one part of the way we protest. If we're protesting to a specific thing with the government, it was to bring the government's attention to our concerns, and the main concerns are to tell the truth about climate change, that we should have community meetings rather than leave it all to government to make the decisions. So I went up there for 2 days, and the third day I was up there, I went specifically to be arrested. So I went down and sat in the road in Trafalgar Square, and duly I was arrested.
The changes these inspiring people are fighting will not come to an end until everyone is involved. These threats can no longer be ignored. We will not have much time to reverse all that we have broken. Ecosystems are single-handedly being destroyed by the raise in temperature that overwhelms our whole planet. We have no time to place blame or to find the ultimate solution. We must act now. We are all to blame for the damage that is done, but it is not over. We are not doomed yet. We already have many smaller solutions that, when practiced in unison for the rest of our time here, we can start to save the planet we have spent so long destroying. We need to stop using the fuel that is scarce and unhealthy for our climate and start to use the renewable energy that won't take a toll on our Earth. These forms of energy will utilize what we already have available to us naturally. There is only a future for us if we make one. After centuries of worry-free living, we now have to start caring about the well-being of our already sick ecosystem. After hearing all of these facts about how our environment is dying and is very sick, and while those facts are not wrong, there are ways to fix this. We as humans have until the year 2035 to clean up our act and clean up the environment. There is a way to help the earth, and it might be something as simple as planting a tree or growing some flowers. Or there are other ways to help, such as spreading awareness to people. A major way to help the world is to try to get everyone involved. If more people are conscious about what road we're going down, they will try to do something that helps. Helen Linden is a great example of an Earth activist. She is part of the organization Extinction Rebellion, whose goals are to use non-violent tactics to sway the government to be more conscious about the environmental impacts of projects they are pursuing. When we talked to Helen Linden, she explained to us how she tries to make change in this world by sitting in the street and planting trees. She's a very inspirational person who cares about this planet's well-being and does something to try to make a positive change. So what can we do about this massive problem that seems to be too big for anyone to take on? We can make conscious decisions about how we act and how we dispose of our garbage and other waste. We as humans have to make sure that we heal this planet and take care of it, because once the Earth is far too gone, there is no fixing it.